Hey everyone, welcome back. You know how much we love digging into those tech developments that really seem like they could change everything?
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Well, get this. I've been going through some research on something that just might revolutionize one of the most ubiquitous technologies out there, the camera.
Really? What, like a new sensor tech or something?
Even more fundamental than that, we're talking about the potential end of lenses as we know them.
Whoa, hold on. No lenses, like at all. How would that even work?
That's exactly what we're going to explore in this deep dive. We're talking lensless cameras, where it's all about direct-to-sensor imaging and some seriously heavy computational lifting to make sense of it all.
I'm already intrigued. So, no more bulky lens, just a sensor capturing light. But how do you get a coherent image without a lens to focus everything?
Yeah, that's the million-dollar question. So let's start with a quick recap of how traditional cameras work, just for context. For over a century, it's all been about that lens, right?
Right. It acts like a funnel for light, gathering those rays and bending them to converge on the sensor. Creates a focused image, like a mini projection of what you're seeing.
Exactly. But now imagine ditching that entire lens assembly. Instead, you have a sensor directly capturing the raw light intensity patterns without any focusing.
Okay, I'm starting to see where this gets tricky. Without a lens to organize the light, wouldn't the sensor just pick up a jumbled mess of light signals?
That's where the magic of computational imaging kicks in. Instead of using optics to form the image, the heavy lifting is done by algorithms that analyze these complex light patterns and reconstruct the scene.
So it's like solving a puzzle, taking all that chaotic light information and piecing together what the scene actually looked like.
Exactly. Think of it as a super high-tech version of those connect-the-dots puzzles. The raw data is the mess of dots, and the algorithm connects them to reveal the image.
That's mind-blowing. It reminds me of those old pinhole cameras. They didn't have lenses either, right?
You got it. The pinhole camera is kind of a distant ancestor to this concept.
Hmm.
It also captures light directly, but through a tiny hole, severely limiting the amount of light that gets in.
Yeah, those pinhole images were usually pretty dim and blurry. How does lensless imaging overcome that limitation?
That's where high-resolution sensors come in. This whole concept hinges on using incredibly detailed sensors that can capture massive amounts of information about the light hitting them.
I see. So the more pixels you have, the more data points you get about the light, giving the algorithm more to work with.
Precisely. And we're not just talking about your typical 12-megapixel phone camera here. We're talking about sensors with hundreds of millions, even billions of pixels.
Wow, that must generate an insane amount of data. But how do you even build sensors that powerful?
The research points to some pretty wild techniques. Imagine taking multiple ultra-high-resolution sensors, say 4 200-megapixel chips, and stacking them together.
So you're basically creating a super sensor with what, 800 megapixels in total?
Yep. And the crazy part is that it's not just about the sheer number of pixels. Stacking sensors like this can also allow them to capture more sophisticated light information, maybe even depth data, right from the start.
And didn't you mention something about Samsung working on these incredibly dense sensors?
Yeah, one of the sources talked about Samsung developing 500-megapixel sensors in a pretty compact form factor.
That's nuts. So we're really talking about a future where cameras could have insane resolution, all thanks to these advancements in sensor technology.
Exactly. And it's these sensor advancements that are making lensless imaging a real possibility.
Okay, so let's talk benefits. Why go lensless? What's the big advantage of ditching the lens?
Well, for starters, think about how much smaller and lighter cameras could become. No more bulky lens assemblies sticking out.
Yeah, that makes sense. Imagine smartphones becoming even slimmer or medical imaging devices that are way more portable.
Precisely. And it goes beyond size and weight. Lensless imaging could also eliminate many of the optical distortions inherent in traditional lenses.
You mean things like chromatic aberrations where colors get messed up at the edges of the image?
Yeah, and barrel distortion, where straight lines appear curved. Because you're reconstructing the image computationally, you can correct these distortions in software.
So you're basically saying that software could potentially do a better job at handling these issues than the most carefully crafted lens.
That's the idea. But it goes even further. Lensless imaging could open up entirely new possibilities in terms of how we capture and process light.
How so? What kind of new things could we do?
Well, for one, think about the flexibility of the sensor itself. You could create sensors in all sorts of shapes and configurations, capturing light fields in ways that traditional lenses just can't.
I see. So you could have curved sensors to capture a wider field of view, or maybe even flexible sensors that can wrap around objects.
Exactly. It could lead to some pretty radical new imaging applications. And there's another key advantage that we shouldn't overlook.
What's that?
Full sensor utilization. In a traditional camera, only the part of the sensor where the lens focuses the light is used to its full potential.
But with a lensless camera, the entire sensor is involved in gathering light information.
Precisely. And that means you're maximizing the amount of data you capture, potentially leading to even higher resolution and detail.
So it sounds like lensless imaging has a lot going for it, but I'm sure there's some serious challenges too.
Of course, any radically new technology comes with its own set of hurdles. One of the big ones is light sensitivity.
Ah, yeah. Lenses concentrate light, making it easier to capture images in low light situations. Without a lens, wouldn't that be a problem?
It's a major challenge.
Oh.
The light gets spread out over the entire sensor, so you need incredibly sensitive sensors and some very clever algorithms to compensate.
So you're basically trying to extract a clear signal from a much weaker light source. And with all those densely packed pixels, wouldn't noise also be a major concern?
Absolutely. More pixels packed into a smaller space can increase the likelihood of noise in the image. So developing effective noise reduction techniques is crucial.
And all that computational reconstruction, doesn't that require a ton of processing power?
It sure does. The algorithms needed to crunch all that data and create a usable image are computationally intensive.
So even if the camera itself is smaller without the lens, you might still need bulky processing units to handle everything.
That's a valid point. The computational demands could be a limiting factor, at least initially. But remember, processing power keeps increasing, so this might become less of an issue over time.
Okay, so it sounds like there's still a lot of work to be done before lensless cameras replace our everyday devices. But what about other applications?
Yeah, the sources point to some really interesting areas where lensless imaging is already being explored.
Like what?
Well, medical imaging is a big one. Think about tiny lensless cameras that could be used for internal examinations without being invasive.
That would be incredible. What else?
Security applications are another area. Imagine completely discrete sensors embedded in walls or clothing, capturing images without anyone noticing.
Interesting. So while lensless cameras might not be in our phones tomorrow, they're already finding their way into some pretty specialized fields.
Exactly. And who knows, maybe someday soon we'll all be taking selfies with our completely flat, lensless smartphones.
I mean, the possibilities are pretty mind-blowing, but beyond the technology itself, it really makes you think about what an image even is.
What do you mean?
Well, for so long, an image has been this direct optical representation of the world created by a lens-focusing light.
But with lensless imaging, it's more like a computational interpretation of scattered light patterns.
Yeah, it's almost like we're shifting from a direct capture of reality to a reconstruction of it.
That's a fascinating point. So as we wrap things up here, it seems like lensless imaging isn't just some incremental improvement. It's a potential paradigm shift.
Couldn't agree more. We're talking about moving away from centuries of optical design and embracing a future where computation and advanced sensors are the driving forces.
And while there are certainly challenges to overcome, the potential benefits are enormous. We're talking about smaller, lighter cameras, potentially better image quality, and entirely new ways of capturing and understanding light.
It's hard to predict exactly how it will all play out, but one thing's for sure. Lensless imaging represents a fundamental change in how we think about cameras and the very nature of an image.
So for all you tech enthusiasts out there, keep an eye on this space. This is a story that's just beginning to unfold, and who knows what incredible developments lie ahead.
Absolutely. It's an exciting time to be following this technology, and I, for one, can't wait to see what the future holds.
Thanks for joining us on this deep dive, everyone. Until next time, keep exploring and stay curious.